welcome everyone to our webinar, 5 ideas to help design a great digital experience. And we've got a bit of a bonus for everyone that it's not just 5 ideas you're going to be going through here. It's probably going to be more like 15 ideas on designing a great digital experience. And we've also got loads of tips that will be coming in from our audience as well. So lots of extra content. Delighted to welcome in his newer role, Keith Gate, who is now the Chief Executive of the Customer Experience Foundation. Welcome, Keith.
Thank you, Jonty. Pleasure to be with you today.
And what a wonderful sounding organization, the Customer Experience Foundation. Can you give us a little pen portrait about the sorts of things you do?
Well, the Customer Experience Foundation has been going since 2007 and was run by Maurice Penthall, who many of your watchers will know. I acquired the foundation from Maurice at the start of the year, and we relaunched 2 months ago. We'll be doing lots of content and a few events. We do a lot of consulting, so very much contact center, but also more broadly CX focused. So that's the focus of the CX organization, very much about learning and development and knowledge sharing, best practice.
Excellent, very good. And we've also got joining us today, Martin Jukes from Empathy Plus. And Martin, I know you've focused on how you can bring more empathy into contact centers and into processes in particular. So welcome, Martin. What are you going to be talking about today?
I'm going to be talking about, thank you, John T, first of all, for inviting me. I'm going to be talking around how we, what are the drivers of digital transformation and what are the lessons that we can learn from how those various projects are driven and what we perhaps need to do differently.
Wonderful. And I also joined for his first webinar with us, Paul Wood from Business Systems. Welcome, Paul.
Thank you, John T.
And Business Systems is probably best known as a systems integrator and technology supplier. And you've just recently been attending the Call Center Expo show in London.
Yeah, I worked out the last time I was at that part of London, because I hadn't been to the XL for since it'd been built, was 1988 for a Jean-Michel Jarre concert. So it was quite funny to be back there some years later, slightly grayer. The weather was a bit better as well. So yeah, so it was good to be here. It was great to be at the show yesterday. It was a big reunion for a lot of people by the look of it, and it was just nice to see all the vendors. You know, everybody's stands looking good, and you know, lots of people out asking some really great questions. So looking forward to being part of this today, and you know, hearing what people think about their journeys.
Excellent. So just a reminder, we're going to be carrying on the discussion today in our chat room. Here's the address of that, callcenterhelper.com/chat. It's a great number of people not logged into the chat room already. So if you could log in, here's the details, callcenterhelper.com/chat. There's a little speed dial if you want, just type in cch.chat. Would be a quick way to get in there. You can download the webinar slides while you're in there, so it's a big advantage to be logged in as well as chatting with other people. Just follow this button once you're logged in, download webinar slides. It does come up in a separate window, so if you perhaps have the slides up on one side of the screen and then either on the other side of the screen have the chat room, or put the chat room up on your mobile phone is probably the quickest way to do it, then you can build that in that way, which I think would work out nicely. There is an added advantage of being in the chat room, is that you can ask questions of our panelists. If you use hashtag question, if you had a question, or hashtag tip, if you have a tip. And we've got for the winning tip either a bottle of champagne, a box of chocolates, an Amazon gift card, or a charitable donation, depending on what works best for you. Just also a reminder that if you want to see a recording of today's webinar, you can do that later on this afternoon, probably about half an hour after the webinar is finished. callcenterhelper.com/recorded webinars. I know a lot of you do like to share the ideas you've seen with your management teams. So I'm just going to start off with a poll, since we're looking at digital channels, and I'd just like to see which channels it is that you currently offer in your organization. So do you offer, select all that apply. Do you offer voice? Do you offer email? Do you offer live chat? Do you offer WhatsApp as a channel? Do you offer Facebook Messenger? Do you have text or SMS as a channel, either for notifications or for surveys? Do you have social media as a channel? And do you have video as a channel? So it'd be interesting to see what you've got coming through. It will take a little while to go through there. Keith, do you expect there'll be many people that have got WhatsApp into their organization yet?
I do, particularly if we've got maybe some retail organizations or more high profile organizations. Certainly the organizations that I'm working with are using WhatsApp. It's probably only making up maybe 5 or 10% of the channel mix. Live chat probably making up maybe 30 to 40%, voice about 30 to 40%. Email can be flexed up and down according to the availability and resource. It's not quite so time critical. What will be interesting is the use of social media. Again, organizations I'm working with, they've got the social channels, but that doesn't seem to be used as much as we maybe thought a few years ago it was going to be. So that'd be really interesting to use. We've got the channels, but customers don't seem to be using that as a service channels. And whether that will change or not, I don't know.
Well, here's the results that have come up. Now, this isn't the mix of channels. This is just whether people offer the channels. So of our audience, 87% are offering voice, 92% are offering email. The next most popular one is social media, 59%. Live chat accounts for over half of people dialing in today. What's next is Facebook Messenger, 20%, which is quite a bit ahead of WhatsApp. And that's perhaps a little bit of surprise, though WhatsApp were very late to have an API to connect into. And what's quite in text, 13%, and video, Martin, is dragging up the lowest amount, but that's actually 8% of people now offering it. That's been a big jump up from, I think, the 2 or 3% last time I saw this.
Yes, I think with what's happened in the last 18 months, 2 years, I think more people are accustomed to using video as an automatic communication channel for both business and pleasure purposes. So I think we're going to see more and more applications using video. I think what's quite interesting around this is the question was around what channels do you currently offer, as opposed to what are your customers actually using. So social media is a good example there, where most people would have a social media presence, but they're not necessarily using it for their customer engagement from an inbound customer service perspective.
And Paul, there's quite a big difference there between email and live chat. I perhaps would have expected to see more live chat on that, as just over half of the people on the call today are offering it.
Yeah, I think I'm also interested in the low levels of the text use as well, because of the cost effectiveness of using text and the convenience, because it is immediately delivered. You can get a really quick and rapid response, and I've seen a lot of very smart use of that two-way text communication. I think some of the restrictions that chat has given organizations is the fact that they've tended to silo it and put agents in there, and so it can be limited, and having to turn it off at the right time when it gets too busy.
Indeed. Well, probably a good time to jump across now to Keith's presentation. Keith, if you'd like to share your ideas on how to create a great digital experience.
Do that. Let me know when you can.
We can see the slides there, just needs to go full screen.
There you go.
There we are.
Happy with that?
There we are. Off we go.
There we go. So I've broken this down for you into 3 key parts. One is the journey that the customer goes on. One is the channel that they use, or the channels we give them. And the third is always comes back to the people. Very much about the channel. But very much about the journey. It's about the journey for the contact or the inquiries. An example I wanted to give you is, particularly if you're a retailer, for example, a customer comes into your store that wants to buy or has got an inquiry. You don't send them to the back of the store, down the stairs and out to the stockroom at the back. So why do we do it online? Why do we bury our contact channels right at the bottom of the website and 5 clicks to get to a contact channel. So an organization that I started working with this year, they actually turned their phone lines off last November because their staff complained it was too busy. It's 19 clicks on their website to get to a live chat before I started working with them. And yet this is a premium high-end retailer, blue chip retailer, that certainly don't do that in their stores. And like a lot of organizations where their stores were shut for 9 months last year, they suddenly realized that their online journey was actually very important and quite underinvested. So, okay, we know all that. So what do we do about it? As CX professionals, it's incumbent upon us to shape and influence across the business. Okay, we can't just allow IT departments or marketing departments to design these journeys for us. So if you're not involved in designing these journeys, then it's being done to you and it's being done to your customers. So you have to be involved. We also have to tell stories. So sort of bring it to life with real life examples of customers where things have gone well for customers or where things have gone badly. And that's something that I've done at many organizations where I've worked. So bring it to life with real examples of good and bad things with customers. You also have to have data to back this up. So financial data, return on investment data, CSAT data, NPS data. Data can't be argued with, so have factual numbers. And all that will outline the impact that this is going to have on the business to your senior leadership team of doing this or of not doing it, because the organizations quite often do have the do nothing option. So this will always outline the impact of not doing this. So who's designing these journeys for you? You wouldn't do it to your mum, so don't do it to your customer. Next, we look at channels. We touched on, and we touched on with the poll, the channels of choice. Customers will expect to engage with you these days in the channels that they want to use, not the channels that you give them. And they will expect to be able to engage with you when they want to engage with you, not just when you choose to be open. And what we see now is that we have a 24/7 sales economy. What very many customers are starting to expect now is a 24/7 service economy. So how do we do? So we have to work out how we do that in a cost optimized way. What we also find is that customers will channel hop, and they will also channel hop quite often within the same interaction. So our systems have to be integrated. And what I've seen, an organization I'm working with at the moment, the issues with this, they're working with a very big leisure chain, and an inquiry can come in. They can only deal with that inquiry. They can't see the customer's history, and that's a fundamental failing of their system. That's causing that organization an awful lot of problems. So again, it's incumbent on us as CX professionals to challenge IT and get these systems integrated. And that's something that some of the audience touched on at the start, a lack of integration with our systems. So we do need lots more channels. It's not always about reducing cost. What we do find quite often is we put more channels in, it actually increases demand. It doesn't necessarily just reduce demand. It's not always about reducing cost. And we do actually also have to understand for whose benefit are we really doing this. So quite often there's a drive to put in AI or to put in live chat or to put in WhatsApp on the expectation sometimes from senior leaders that they are lower cost to serve channels, and that's not always the case because that can increase demand. AI does have a part to play, particularly as what we're seeing so much, particularly in the UK at the moment, is an awful lot of pressure on contact centres to recruit and retain staff. It's a massive problem for every organisation at the moment, and so where chatbots can automate some interactions, and anything that we can do to help that is going to reduce the pressure on our staff. And finally, with our people, do we actually have the right customers to support? Do we actually have the right people to support customers across these journeys? So I'm working with an organization at the moment that we've recently outsourced to. They're used to working on fairly basic traditional campaigns, and they're struggling with the omni-channel expertise and the level of integration required, and where they're expected to resolve so much more. And it's really interesting that one of the things that came up on the introduction earlier, what we found is that agents are cherry picking the tickets, and that's having a detrimental impact on service levels. They're struggling to meet the fast contact resolution because of that, because they're not used to being able to having to have nowhere to hand off to other departments. And all the information and systems are available to them to deal with that because the functionality is there. And that's something that this organization had in-house because they took the time to get the systems right. So it takes a certain type of individual who can deal with that level of functionality. What we're also seeing through different styles of leadership and hybrid working is some organizations suffering an awful lot of attrition and having lots of disciplinary problems with lots of home workers that haven't previously worked in this sector before, that aren't used to some of the levels of occupancy and availability that we expect to see in this sector. And finally, there was a brilliant post 2 days ago from Natalie Calvert, who many of you will know and has been a speaker on these webinars before. A brilliant post from her on LinkedIn talking about an issue that she had with an organization, a customer service issue that she had with an organization that had gone through several iterations and several layers within an organization trying to get an issue resolved. And at all stages, the blame kept going back to the agent. And what she was trying to say was, it's not the agent that's got this wrong. Your systems are wrong, your integration were wrong, your service model were wrong. So don't blame the agent when everything else on this slide is wrong. Jonty, back to you.
Wonderful. Some absolute wonderful words of wisdom there, Keith. So thank you very much indeed for that. Just if everyone can put into the chat room, what did you like best about Keith's presentation? I think there were some great words of wisdom there. Put the contact details for your service at the front of your online journey rather than trying to burying it. Trying to hide numbers to reduce demand is not a very effective strategy. Customers will engage with you in the channel of their choice, not at the channel of your choice. So be very careful in trying to push customers down a journey. Quite interesting that customers are now expecting a 24-hour service to match the 24-hour sales. That is so much there. And it's very important that you challenge IT to get the systems integrated. It's one of the things that we go, oh, everything's running slow again today. We sort of roll our eyes and it goes into the too difficult category. Well, we really have to stand up and be counted and move that forward. So hopefully that's coming through. Well, let's have a look at some top tips and questions that are coming through from the chat room. Lorna says, I'd be interested to know if the teams that are handling contacts like WhatsApp and Facebook are the same as the chat teams, or are they resourced individually? So I don't know if anyone in the audience can...
I can answer that from my experience. So the organization I'm working with, the boutique retailer that were working with this in-house, so all their staff were multi-skilled. So they would deal with phone, WhatsApp, social, live chat. They were all multi-skilled. There was an element of moving them around intraday, but they were all multi-skilled. Now, last year, almost to the day, actually, the middle of November, just coming up to Black Friday, they got very, very busy, and they decided to shut the phone lines, and that's what's led to the big piece of work this year. Now we got the phone lines switched back on, and we've outsourced that. But with the outsourcer, they've struggled with the multi-skilling element of it. That's and that surprised us actually. It's an award-winning outsourcer, and they've struggled with that multi-skilling element. So don't always assume that that's the holy grail.
Interesting. So let's have a look at the next question that's come through. Do you find it harder to plan resource when offering multiple channels? Paul, I don't know if you've got any thoughts on planning resource.
Yeah, that's a very interesting one, and I think that's often where the planning comes very difficult to organizations that don't either have the right technology or are moving into a new channel for the first time. How do you know how many chat sessions you're going to get until you've started running chat sessions, and how long are they going to take, and where does that demand go when there's a problem with an escalation, etc. So it is a little bit of, you know, and in one of my slides I'll talk about not trying to boil the ocean, do a little bit at a time and learn and build up the history so that you can understand it. And any good, you know, WEM, WFM planning solutions should allow you to, you know, plan effectively for a range of different channels. It shouldn't be harder, is my view.
Indeed, I think that's it's probably one that's going a bit beyond Erlang to do that. Martin, Wendy says, when offering channels, you need to make sure they are sufficiently and knowledgeably staffed to ensure success, and remember to include all user groups from baby boomers to millennials. I guess, Martin, there's a challenge that we often put people on the recruit people who are good chatting on the phone, and then put them on a keyboard and expect them to be equally proficient at that.
Yes, I think that's very, very true, and I've seen lots of examples of where that's worked well, but also examples of where it hasn't worked so well. It is really important. I think we go back to one of the points we talked about just before the webinar, which was around knowledge. And it doesn't matter which channel you're using, you've got to have the fundamental knowledge to start with to be able to resolve those customers' inquiries or to be able to support that customer. So I think from that perspective, it does make it an opportunity to work across different channels. But I would definitely agree that it's not always appropriate to have everybody working on every channel because of their particular skill sets. And I think Paul, I think you just said that we try and get everybody to do everything. Actually, that's not always the most efficient and effective way.
Can I make a point there too, John T?
Yeah.
One of the things that I've picked up working with a couple of retailers this year, affinity to your organization is really, really good.
Yeah.
That's, you know, and that's where things like Gig CX are starting to make an impact, is if you've got people that have a stronger affinity to your organization rather than someone you've just recruited, then they're going to be a bit more engaged and they're just going to have a slightly stronger competency.
Indeed. Well, we've got one last question before we go into Martin's presentation. Misty is asking, where do you determine the service level for various channels? Certainly there's some research on Call Center Helper that shows what people are actually picking as a channel now, and the one that seems to me, Keith, that seems to be a little bit short is email service, where it still seems that the 4-hour response time is the norm. I don't know if you've got any thoughts on how you pick your service levels.
I think 4 hours is optimistic for most organizations on email. I think 12 or 24 hours is starting to become acceptable, and I think a lot of customers now have got used to understanding that if they really need an issue dealt with, they go through another channel. If they really need an issue dealt with, email isn't a channel for them to use. So it is live chat. It is WhatsApp, or it is a phone call. Certainly, a lot of people are not expecting immediacy off of email, because I think they realise it's not going to get dealt with that quickly. And also, organisations don't help themselves when you do send an email and you get an automated response saying we might get to you in 3 days.
Indeed. Well, we're going to, before we just jump into Martin's presentation, just going to ask the question is, who is the primary instigator of your digital journey? Who is behind going digital? Who's really driving it in your organization? It's a bit tough here because I'm asking you to take one answer from this. So is it the chief executive driving it? Is it senior management? Is it customer service that's driving it? Is it customer demand that's driving it? Is it IT? Is it marketing? What is the primary instigator of your digital journey? We've got most people voted here. Let's just share the result. Sample size here of 59, and senior management is the biggest. Martin, perhaps sort of surprising, customer service is down in second position, quite low down, and the chief exec, who I thought often would be the big driver of going digital, is actually much lower.
It's a very interesting response, isn't it? And going back again to one of the Keith's points, I would expect customer service to have more of a role in pushing the digital transformation of organisations. Obviously, senior management covers quite a broad area, but yes, you're responsible for these areas. You're responsible for delivering the service. Take control and lead is my advice.
Okay, well, it's probably a good time to go for the rest of your advice then, Martin, if you'd like to pop your slides up on the screen.
Thank you very much. Really see that okay. So hello everybody, Martin Jukes from MC Plus, and I'm here today to talk to you about designing a great digital experience. I'm really sort of quite keen to start thinking around what is that digital experience and what does digital and digital transformation mean. I think there's a lot of terminology used that's been around for a long time, that is buzzwords, words to make you think something is different. So it's about what do we really believe digital transformation is and the digital experience is. One of the things I'm quite keen to look at today is looking at my experience and how I can give some tips and hints on two specific areas really. One is where things have gone well for organisations that have deployed a change, and others is to really learn about some of the poor experiences where things haven't gone as well. There's a hell of a lot of smoke and mirrors in digital transformation and digital journeys, whatever terminology we use. Lots of people talk around how they've implemented a digital experience, and when you look at it, it looks quite impressive on first appearances. When you start to dig a little deeper, we start to see actually it's not all that it could be, or it doesn't really go the full way. So I've got a couple of examples. So for example, one of the really good organisations for having a digital experience that's well established would be the DVLA for when you want to sort of pay your road tax. And like others on this webinar, I can remember having to walk to the post office and take all my documents and queue and hope that I've got the right information, and often I haven't. That's really changed with a really good digital experience of being able to go online and do those things. So well done to the DVLA. But then recently my wife changed her car and had a refund from the DVLA for her car tax, and it came by cheque. And I was really quite surprised that we're still using cheques in those sorts of examples. I've got another example of where a ferry booking service, they talk about how they've introduced digital booking, online booking capability. But actually, when I booked my tickets, all it did was it led me to a position where I made a booking online, or what I thought was a booking, didn't take any cash, it printed a voucher. I took the voucher to the kiosk at the ferry boarding place and paid, and was given the ticket then. So it's hardly a digital experience, just an opportunity to observe and perhaps reserve some capability. There's the online retailer that I worked with, that I sort of was a customer of some time ago, whereby I was trying to make a complaint about a delivery, and calling a very busy time. Message sent me to live chat. I went to live chat. Live chat was closed. Live chat referred me to email, and going round and round and round and round in circles. And actually, the fundamental problem with that organisation was they had one group of people, a limited number of people, who were trying to serve all of these channels. And actually, if the volumes are high the volumes are high, you need more people. You can't just have more channels to move things around. You've got to be able to deal with that full expectation. And then the other example I've got of perhaps a poor digital experience is where people are resorting to social media. So I saw something last week that said, oh, I'm posting here on Facebook because I tried calling and couldn't get through, and then I sent an email and didn't get a reply. So now I'm sort of resorting to Facebook. And actually, I think that one of my observations is that people use Facebook and social media as a little bit of a threatening tool at times. So they post it in the public arena so other people will see that. And it creates a little bit of panic in organisations. So they tend to respond a little bit quicker to those publicly commented notes. So when we talk about digital transformation, what is it we're actually transforming? Because I can see that organisations have processes and systems behind them. They have a website in front of them. They have customers who are contacting them through a variety of different channels. Which part are we referring to when we talk about digital transformation? Now, for some people, it would be simply the channels themselves, of adding a channel. I'm not sure that's what I would call transformation. I think it's adding and increasing, improving a service, enhancing a service. But I also think that we need to look at the whole end-to-end experience. And that's not just around technology. What a number of organisations forget is we really need to think about that whole customer experience, the whole piece around the organisational development. How do we need to change to be able to work differently in a different sort of way, a different manner? What does the culture need to be when we're dealing with different types of customer inquiries? What are our organisational values? How do we really start to become customer focused in delivering a better service? Because by default, in my mind, if we're transforming, we want to transform to something that's better rather than going backwards. So I think it's really important that we start to design around the desired outcomes, be very, very clear about what it is we're trying to do, what are the objectives, and then plan around how to deliver against those. There's a number of drivers of digital transformation, from systems that are going out of date, the desire to improve performance, whether it's costs or whether it's efficiency, improving the customer experience. There's also something about trying to keep pace with competitors. And I've come across quite a few organisations that have tried to keep pace with competitors. And as a result, they've made changes, quite fundamental changes. When I look at sort of organisations that replace their systems, one of the common mistakes that they make is their systems may be end of life or unreliable or for whatever reason. They don't do anything else other than change their systems. So they don't change the way they work, the way they operate. They simply replace the technology. And as a result, they might have got a slight increase in efficiency, but the real opportunity is one that's being missed because they're not changing the way they are for customers. They're not changing the way they are for their own efficiency. So I think it's really important to start with the process and not necessarily their systems. It's about trying to make it better for the customer rather than just for the IT providers. In terms of improving performance, again, we need to think about what do we mean by performance. And for many organisations, they would look at cost. I worked with another organisation, and they were having very few phone calls, and their opening hours of phone calls were quite limited. And when I asked them, the contact centre manager, why this was, he said, well, IT decided that it was too expensive to be taking all these telephone calls. You know, we were taking 100,000 phone calls a year. They were costing £5 each. So they started to move people and really promote the use of email. So as a result, a lot of that 100,000 calls were transferred to email. And yes, sure enough, they reduced the number of calls quite considerably. What they hadn't really thought about was the cost of delivering an email. And when we calculated that, it was shown to be £10 for handling an email. I'll say £10, that's a rounded figure, but more or less twice the price of handling a phone call. So the attempt to improve performance had actually failed. Some people would see it as a real saving, but actually that performance element had failed. And it was possibly because there were people involved in channel shift that didn't really understand what they were trying to do. When we start to look at self-service, we start to see, again, quite considerable savings for some people. There are real benefits in terms of customers being able to do more and more for themselves. but we still need to have some agents there sitting behind there. There are always going to be some inquiries that that customers are unable or unwilling to do themselves. And when we talk about retail outlets, retail organisations and others that are charging for their services, the thing we really need to focus on is what's right for the customer. So having the agents with the right skills and right tools are really important. The other area of performance I want to just mention briefly is that when we change things, inevitably we lose some things as well as gaining a lot. And we just need to be aware of what it is we're changing. So I use an example of a sat nav as being quite a good indicator of how I've changed. So I use a sat nav nearly all of the time. I used to know where I was driving. I used to know where I was going, which was the best route, where I'd been to before, those sort of things. Now I rely on a sat nav. I've lost that ability. I've lost a little bit of that sense of direction of where I am, and also possibly the ability to read a map, which is a skill that I used to quite enjoy. Moving on to the customer, and we would, as I said earlier, we would really like to improve services and experiences for the customer rather than just for the organisation. So what we need to do there is we need to make sure that we're involving customers in the design of that experience and ensuring that they're efficient and effective for the customer rather than just for the organisation. Far too often I see organisations who think they understand their customers and they come and they make changes, fundamental changes, and customers just don't adopt them because it's not really what they want. So it's really important to be able to consider those customers. And going back again to one of the key slides, it's really important to offer the customers the choice of which channel they use and the choice and convenience of when they use it. And also sitting behind that, and this doesn't matter which channel it is, the confidence that you're going to do what you said you were going to do for the customer and they're going to get the service that they really wanted. And the final area that I'm talking about as regards drivers of change is organisations that transform or introduce new channels because their competitors have done that. I think this is something I feel quite strongly around. You know, if you're starting to follow your competitors, inevitably by the time you've caught up, they've moved on. So you're always going to be one step behind. I think it's really, really important to be able to design services around your own business, your own organisation, identifying your own USPs and your differentiators, and then developing those services around your brand values. Really, really important, I think, and one that many organisations are starting to lose by just copying others. So my final slide is really talking around, to summarise, and I think we have two sorts of people generally in life. We have people that are very structured and people that are very creative. When we come to looking at digital transformation and introducing new digital journeys, we need a combination of both. We need to have that creative side, but we need to have a structured approach to delivering it and making sure that it meets all stakeholders' expectations and needs. So thank you for listening. I hope that's been helpful.
Wonderful. Thank you very much indeed for that, Martin. We're going to be jumping across into a quiz in a minute. So if you could log into the chat room. We haven't got too many people logged in the chat room today. So here's the address. It's callcenterhelper.com/chat, and we'll run the quiz. If you could also, once you're logged in, just drop in what did you like best about Martin's presentation. Some really good words of advice there. Martin, a really good digital experience needs to be joined up. You can't just change your technology. You need to be able to change the way that you operate. Adding channels does not necessarily save money. In fact, could easily end up by costing more. I guess one of the big reasons for that being that you're actually, by offering more channels, you're offering more ways that people can contact you. And has your organization's sat-nav gone off track? Have you forgotten that you used to navigate with the customer in mind and you're now relying on the systems to do that? I think a very opportune one. Certainly my sat-nav, when I drove to the call center expo show in the week, was absolutely adamant that it needed me to go through central London on every junction of the M25 rather than going all the way around and flowing. So I got there quicker by doing old-fashioned driving the map in your head. So quite Quite good advice there. Okay, good. So we're across in the chat room. So use the buttons on the bottom of the screen to start voting. So the first one, true or false? 42% of consumers believe that convenience is more important than price. 42% of consumers believe that convenience is more important than price. If you think it's A, press the blue true. If you think it's true, press the A blue button, or false, the B red button. So let's have a look at where that's coming through. Most of you got that wrong. The answer was not 42%. The actual answer is 58%. The statistics comes from a 2021 BT report, and it suggests that low effort digital experiences are the golden ticket to customer satisfaction. All too often going digital is low effort for the company, but not low effort for the customer. So let's have a look through. Across the industry, which of the following customer service channels is used by the fewest number of customers? Is it A, email, B, live chat, C, social media, or is it D, SMS? Which of the following customer service channels is used by the fewest customers for customer service? Let's have a look at our voting. Yes, I think there was probably a clue on what people were offering there. SMS was that, actually much lower to 1.3% than social media, according to our latest research we've published. Which channel would customers prefer to be alerted to problems through? Would they prefer to be alerted to problems through an email, B, through a messaging app or SMS, through C, social media, or D, a voice? Would they prefer a telephone call? So which channel would customers prefer to be alerted to problems through? Let's have a look at there. Actually, most people presumed it would be a message, and actually most of you got that answer wrong. According to a BT, the same BT survey, 64% of customers said they'd like to become aware of issues or problems such as delays and faults via email, not through text messaging. So though text messaging has got a very strong part, it's not necessarily always the customer's first choice. Let's have a look. So how did 55.3% of call center helper readers describe their experience with chatbots? Did 55% say it was excellent? Did they say it was good? Did they say it was mediocre? Or did they say was bad? What was the experience of dealing with chatbots? And let's have a look here. Well, I think most of you got that right. 12 people there had it as mediocre. So it does strike me as a bit of a surprise that everyone's rushing so hard to implement chatbots when the audience think their approach is mediocre. But it does look like about a quarter of the audience have found mostly positive chatbot experiences. So the overall winner on that, been pretty well all the way through, is Daryl 5. So we will get in touch with you, Daryl, to sort out a prize. So right, good times rushing forward. So we'll jump across to Paul Wood, and Paul, if you'd like to put up your slides and share with your ideas about how to design a great digital experience.
Okay, just check you can see that okay, Jonty?
We can indeed.
All right, great. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to a few slides from myself, and broken these down into sort of the 5 key tips, really. I start off with, your organization. For me, I think it's absolutely critical that the entire organization is aligned around the customer journey. The most successful ones, the most successful digital organizations are the ones where the customer isn't just put first, it's at the heart of everything that they do. And they've broken down how they work with the customers to really simple themes. How can we help you today? How can we better serve the customer? And simplifying what you're looking to do through the digital transformation that you're having and getting it agreed, and always coming back to that in your planning is critical. It's very easy to get into lots and lots of detail, but if you have a clear vision of what you're trying to do, and that then is always a good point of reference to come back. So when you're looking at your organizational structure, everything has to be aligned. You've got to have the procurement processes for new vendors, system management, Where is the data? How accessible is it? Who is managing the design? And then ultimately, the frontline staff and the whole organization need to work in harmony. The entire organization needs to work focusing on that customer journey, moving away from a very siloed way of thinking, but also a way of operating. And that's going to be a challenge. That will definitely be a challenge for the vast majority of businesses, both from a cultural aspect, certainly from a structural aspect. And that means it's going to need very strong leadership from the top down, but it's also going to need very strong buy-in from everybody. And one thing that I also was thinking about when I was reflecting on these slides over the last few days is the amount of time that that's going to need from senior leadership. I've seen many projects where the leadership comes on very early and they're really involved, and there's the days and the weeks and the months go past and the meetings go on and on. They generally just disappear over time. That's got to change if you're going to really truly transform the organization. Everybody has to get behind this plan, this ethos. And if you can get everybody aligned, creating that document, that view, that vision, and sharing it and living it, the most fundamental foundation of what you're trying to do, you are going to be halfway to success. So that's my first one for you. The second one is around the technology and the adoption. So you've got the organization set up, now you need to start thinking about the technology. So once you've aligned the why you are doing everything, you can start to think about the how. What do you know right now about that digital journey that your customers are going through? How can you personalize it? We talk a lot about data, and data is the key to giving you an extra level of personalization. And then I spend a lot of my time looking at gaps and gap analysis and why don't things work, and what is it you don't know about your customer journey, and how can you fix that? Can you fix that? Because those gaps will be critical in the success. Now, I believe that if you're doing these transformational projects, they should be transformational, and you should look at how you use the information that you're gathering to ensure that you're improving your business over and over again. How can you take the data from the actual outcomes that you're getting to make that experience even better? Now, digital first sounds great, and when it works well, it is, but what happens when it doesn't? And we know, I've seen a lot of examples in different media posts as well recently, and one that stuck out to me was the gentleman that was abroad and was given directions to go to the app to solve his problem with a banking solution, but the app wouldn't work because he couldn't log in because he had all these connectivity problems. So it's great sending people in a certain route, but what happens when it doesn't work if you don't have a smartphone or you don't have the connectivity? But think about the digital journey, particularly for people with disabilities. If you are visually impaired, a digital journey is going to need a lot of screen time, and that may not be the best route for those particular individuals. So you need to consider all of your customers. And then everything is critical in this bit here is, but what happens when it goes wrong and somebody needs to escalate? What information can you gather from the digital journey that's happened when it's passed to a voice agent or through another escalation channel, so that that customer does not have to repeat everything again and start that whole painful experience if it's a complaint, etc. And then you've really got to look at the technology. Do you have the right technology for your plans, your aspirations? Because if you don't, it's going to limit what you can achieve. And you need to find partners that can work with you actively, that can actually challenge you and tell you that they think you're doing it wrong. You're maybe going down the wrong road. You're very likely to need to invest in new technology. Any new technology partner should be helping you build that ROI. It's a really simple process, but it is very critical to the success of that. And looking at automation and AI, we just heard a few comments around that. The older the legacy platforms you have, the harder the integration of those automated processes will be, and you're going to need to stitch them together with different applications, which is going to make any changes difficult. Do you have a data strategy? Is your data fragmented? How can you bring all that together? And if the data is hidden in different systems and other systems can't see it, it's going to limit the impact that you can have. You should be scoring the systems that you've got. I've seen that done very effectively in the last few months. How well is that system now? How well is it geared up for you in the future? So you've gone through all of those. You're ready to look at your project and start putting the plan together. We've got the vision, etc. I see lots of great plans, lots of really good visions, and hugely aspirational and very exciting. Unfortunately, they tend to often be too big. My advice is always to not, I love this phrase, my American colleagues used it all the time, don't try and boil the ocean. Don't try and bite off more than you can chew. Then the organization is really geared up to deliver successfully. This is a journey. And as long as that journey has a start and a destination, you are going to go along that. And, you might take a stop to get a cup of coffee and pause and reflect. You've always got to come back to the why you are doing it. And is what you're doing right for the customer? Don't lose sight of that. When you're looking at the projects, you've got to look at all of the elements that are within it, the technology, the timeline, the systems, the resources. Do you have enough people to deliver it? I don't think I've been on a project that has ever had enough people to deliver it. I think that's always a shortfall. But what is the impact of that going to be? And does management understand that? Do the leadership understand that? How that will help with the success of that project? If you can get all of these things aligned and get at least the risks clear and visible, then that's going to avoid nasty surprises, and that will get you to where you want to go quicker. This is a critical one for me. I spent a lot of time talking about gamification and the generational aspects in contact centers and how quickly they are changing, but also that is obviously the same with customers as well. And it's been touched on throughout today. And every generation does have a preferred channel of communication. And I think, Martin, you were touching on that earlier on. Do you understand that? Do you know all of these channels, how they work, how they're best used? And do you know your customer base well enough to understand where they live? Because there's no point in setting up all of these Facebook Messenger channels and WhatsApp channels if your customers don't live in that space, in that life. And once you've done all of that and you've got those channels set up, how well geared up are your agents to actually work with those? We did talk about that there. Some agents are great with voice, but they're not necessarily geared up to work with a multi-concurrency web chat session. You've got to look at, again, how you can handle that. And are the systems able to handle that peak demand that you may get with you turning these channels on and off during the year? And then finally, coming back to the why. Why are you doing it? How are you going to do it? Don't get into the weeds too soon. Never lose sight of the vision. And you really want to make sure that you're not just doing it. Do you just turn these channels on, but is it because the competitors are doing it, etc.? You've got to have a reason, and everybody's got to understand what that reason is, and it's got to resonate with the customers. I'm a huge advocate of reviewing what you're doing at regular periods, and don't be afraid to throw it in the bin. If it's not working, get rid of it. Go and do something else and get rid of it. Make sure that you have the technology that can support this. Legacy systems will need to be replaced. Adding more on to a legacy system only compounds the inadequacies of it. So you've really got to make sure that everybody understands the limitations that system will have. And that comes into having an entire business alignment. Getting that channel of choice delivered with the technology is good. If you get all of these done, your business aligned, you should be there and have a good digital experience. That's me. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you very much indeed for that, Paul. Hopefully I'll be getting the right screen up now.
You got it. That's the one.
Would like to see a demonstration of some of the solutions that business systems supply. If you'd just like to put that up on the screen, some great words of wisdom there. Don't assume your digital journey will suit everyone. Not everyone has a smartphone, and not everyone has network connectivity. So it's very easy to lose track on that. Quite a nice tip, Paul. I thought you should be scoring the systems that you have in your organization. I think that would be quite a good starting point to see what you need to work on.
And how many you have as well, Jonty, because I think sometimes people forget just how many systems are lurking in the cupboards.
Indeed. So, and if you're putting in a new system in, phase your delivery. Don't try and boil the ocean. Make sure it's right for all of the customers. So let's just go across to the chat room and see what people have been saying. Claire has said, adding more channels needs to make the experience easier for the customers. If something goes wrong and they need to change channels, they don't want to have to repeat themselves, which I think is a great summary of some of the things absolutely. You've been saying there. Wendy says, unless the feedback of your agents who are the front line of customer contact, they hear firsthand what is not working, can provide management suggestions of what would work better. Buy-in is key. I think Keith, sort of frontline opinion is quite critical. I think Keith's on mute.
You're on mute, Keith.
I think Keith's on mute.
There we go. Yeah, no, I completely agree, and that's a piece of work I'm doing at the moment, actually, with an organisation who I'm doing an operational review for the executive leadership team, and actually getting close to the floor and actually listening to particularly the team leaders and some of the issues they've got, and again picking up on Paul's point and Martin's point about the systems. You know, they've implemented a few things, and unfortunately have done a transformation and gone backwards, and that's something we see sadly a bit too often.
There's quite an interesting comment in from Luke, who says, and Martin, I don't know if you've got an opinion on this, how do you implement a wholly digital experience which doesn't alienate those who still prefer a traditional approach to customer service? I guess, you know, I've seen things such as organizations bring in digital tickets, but actually throw away their old, if you like, paper tickets. And there's a danger because that might suit some people.
And I suppose what's not clear from Luke here is if he's referring to customers or members of the organisation, because I think with when it comes to customers, then if they're going to choose which way they want to interact with organisations, and will continue to choose. I think the internal people, it's very much around change management, and I think with every digital project I've ever been involved, in fact every change project, there's always going to be some people that don't buy into the change at the early stage, and it's around having a good change management procedure or program to be able to make sure they buy in.
I'd just add to that, if I can, go back to the why you were doing it. And if you're focusing on the why you're doing it, that is an outcome. Otherwise, you'll get into the how you were doing it and the what you were doing, which is the technology and the processes. And people generally don't like change. But if you go to the why, then there's the vision, and that becomes this is where we're going as an organization or as a business. But again, you know, don't underestimate, you know, the power of the customer, and they'll go somewhere else if they prefer that way of working.
Yeah, or they make a lot of noise and you'll have a PR problem on your hands.
Here's an interesting question from Kate, and I think we'll go around the table on this one. What is better, live chat from the start, I get straight to an agent, or talk to an AI bot first and then pass across to a live agent if needed?
If I could come in on this one, I actually wrote a blog about this a couple of months ago about my experience with an insurance company when basically don't cheat the customer. So I was wanting to make a policy change with quite a well-known insurance company. It said click the live chat button. So I clicked the live chat button, and it became quite apparent within a couple of clicks it wasn't really live chat. It was a chat bot. And surprise, surprise, the chat bot wasn't able to do a simple policy change, and then needed to put me through to a live agent. So if we're going to do that, let's be clear that it is a chat bot, and let's not cheat the customer, which some organizations are doing.
Yeah.
So again, customer choice is key here.
Martin, your thought?
I think that it's around, again, what the customer wants. If I can use a bot and get all of the information that I need, then I'm quite happy to do that. However, it's those occasions where you can't get what you need from a bot. You need to be able to speak to a live person for those situations. So I think I don't think there's which one is better. I think it depends on all the circumstances, the product, the services being offered, and the customer involved in that as well, and what they're looking to do.
Indeed. And Paul, do you have an opinion on this?
Oh, definitely. You know, it comes back to what are you trying to achieve by putting a bot in, because these things don't work out of the box. They take a lot of work to get going, and when they do, they still need a lot of work to keep them in that place. If you are running a complex business with a complex product, then a bot is going to give you a lot of challenges to get the answer right immediately. So I think the simpler your business or the simpler the customer query is likely to be, then a bot can service it. As soon as you start moving into complex businesses, well, live chat with escalation for me every day.
If I could add to that, the organisation that I'm working with, we've actually just turned the chatbot off in the last 6 weeks, because what the chatbot thought was one set of product inquiries was actually 20,000 product inquiries about 20,000 different things, and it was too complex for the bot, and the knowledge system couldn't cope with it. We've actually turned the chatbot off, which is quite revolutionary for an organisation in 2021.
Indeed. Well, I'm afraid that's all that we've got time for now. If you could say what you liked best about today's webinar, I promised that we'd pick a winning tip. The winning tip comes from Becky8, who says, set key dates throughout the year to review the customer journey through the customer's perception. What blockers did you face? Where was the friction? And then focus on these areas to help improve. Becky, I do love that idea of having a set key date throughout the year to review this, because it's very easy just to start on the journey and then not go back on a particular date to review that. So we're going to be in touch with you for your prize. We've got a little survey. It's only 4 questions long, if you could fill that before you leave us. A replay will be available later on this afternoon if you want to share that with your management team. And you still have time to register for our 2022 series, of which you've got the first 2 webinars on. We're back on the 27th of January, so we've got about a 2-month break before our next webinar. So just like to thank all of our speakers and wish them a very pleasant end of year if I don't speak before. Keith Gate from the Customer Experience Foundation, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure, and thank you everyone for listening to us today.
Martin, it's been great to have you along as ever.
Great. So I always get a lot out of these events, and particularly the thoughts of the other presenters as well. So thanks.
And Paul, thanks for joining us and sharing with us your insight.
That's great. Thank you very much. It's been really good fun. Really enjoyed it.
Well, wonderful. Hope everyone has a very pleasant end of year if we don't speak before. And we'll be back on the end of January for our 2022 series. Thanks very much then. Goodbye, everyone. Bye-bye all.
Thank you.